Ever wonder how your favorite natural animals or dinosaurs would fare if they were pitted up against one another? Or what evolutionary hacks would give you a leg up against the competition? The answers can be found on TierZoo, real life's best gaming channel.
Welcome to TierZoo.
Hosted by Patch, TierZoo takes a look at the strange strategies that life on this planet has developed in order to survive and thrive. How the channel does this is ingenious.
Anyways, when deciding how you want your character to function in battle, you need to consider the 4 basic fighting styles. Those are Grappler, Rushdown, Spacing, and Projectile. The Grappler build's goal is to prevent their opponent from attacking or escaping while reducing their HP to 0. Every style of fighter has their weaknesses, and grapplers tend to struggle against projectile-based builds, and also get hard countered by perks like Spikes and Slime. These next 2 build types, Rushdown and Spacer, are very similar in that both focus on landing individual strikes on their opponent rather than grabbing them. Rushdown builds focus on getting in close on their targets and dishing out as many hits as they can. Typically, one individual strike from a Rushdown build isn't all that strong, but several within a short time frame can bring down even the highest HP targets. Generally, instead of focusing on power, mobility is the most important stat for rushdowns. The advantages of this class include being able to bring down higher HP targets, as well as generally being able to outspeed and escape from opponents that are too tough for you to bring down quickly. Spacing-based characters try to deal damage to their opponent while remaining out of reach. This is typically accomplished by making use of attacks that have disjointed hitboxes, allowing them to strike or pressure an enemy without risking an immediate counterattack. There are many attributes you can choose from in order to give your character access to moves like this. Some examples would be horns, long claws, armored limbs, and tail weapons. Unlike rushdown builds, spacer builds tend to focus on landing only 1 or 2 individual attacks as opposed to a flurry of blows. The last category of character is projectile-based. Projectile characters tend to require a ton of investment into a single technique that will hopefully be useful enough to make them viable fighters. The investment into projectiles is costly and difficult to use, but when used the right way they can be extremely difficult to play against. The most common form of projectile is a spray. Using the move Spray combined with an acid, glue, or smelly substance can result in a projectile that deals heavy damage, inflicts a poison status effect, reduces mobility, or even just destroys resolve.
TierZoo organizes the program as if you, the viewer, were choosing one of the listed creatures as a potential avatar to play as in a simulation referred to as the meta.
When creating a character, it's important to take into account which server you plan to play on, as well as the current state of the meta on that server. Most builds don't have the mobility required to change servers, so you want to make sure you know what you're getting into. But which server is the best choice for you, and which abilities can give you a leg up on the competition there?
By contextualizing natural creatures as playable options in a high-stakes competitive video game, TierZoo teaches the audience about zoology in a fun way that is easy to grasp and surreal.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
In every competitive game, it's inevitable that players will eventually discover ways to use the physics engine to their advantage. From rocket jumping, to wave dashing, dead angles, to rocket rides, emergent gameplay can be the key to taking your effectiveness as a player to the next level. And Outside is no different. There are abilities in the game that the devs designed to be used one way, but can also be extremely useful in entirely separate situations that the devs did not anticipate. In addition to having solid mobility and high intelligence, the cuttlefish has the highest stealth level of any build in the game. Its high stealth allows it to use the move Color Change and the move Shapeshift. Both of these can be used in combination to achieve an unparalleled level of undetectability. But there are other uses for the Color Change ability. And no, Chameleon mains, I'm not talking about using it for an emote. I'm talking about hypnosis. If you use Color Change and rapidly cycle through colors over and over, you can actually seriously mess with the graphics engine and cause other players' games to crash. This leads to a free win and a lot of salt from crustacean mains.
That takes care of the zoo portion of the channel's name. The tier side stems from the ranking system that Patch showcases to show what evolutionary traits help a creature to survive and what ones cause it to hinder.
After the dinosaurs were nerfed, a lot of niches were left wide open. The power vacuum created a lot of pretty janky builds, most of which ended up getting nerfed in the final Ice Age balance patch. And so I think it's time to finally create the Ice Age tier list. It's tough to make a fair tier list simply because just about every build that went extinct can directly or indirectly blame humans. Humans unlocking projectile weapons gave them such an oppressive advantage over large mammals that they became totally unstoppable in any server that lacked the proper counters. But since you should already be fully aware of how OP humans are, we're gonna kinda skip past them in this tier list and talk about the other great builds from the Ice Age meta. As always, we'll start from the bottom of the tier list and move up from there. Next up, we've got the wolf. The wolf is one of the cornerstones of the forest meta and pioneered the technique that most pack hunting builds use today. So that's the tier list for the sharks. As you can see, they're an amazing class with a lot of useful abilities and strengths to play around with. The next build I have in A tier is Ankylosaurus, perhaps the best tank build ever to exist in the game. This build essentially took the Stegosaurus strategy and cranked it up to the most extreme it could. Instead of backplates for intimidation, the Ankylosaur players spec'd into armor, and instead of tail spikes they opted for a club. Their armor was so impenetrable that it made attacks from even the strongest carnivore mains pretty laughable. Human beings. Are they as overpowered as the game's community would lead you to believe? Short answer, yeah.
You like learning about nature and all the weird and wonderful creatures on our planet? Go ahead and check out TierZoo.